Right, hello. So time for a live stream. I've got slow mode on again because that's becoming easier and easier to read back on these streams. So the slow mode's on. That just basically means that lots of people can't spam, the comments every 3 seconds, like what's your favorite gas mask? What's your favorite gas mask? So it makes the streams a bit more bearable in that regard. Obviously, for all the really good sort of intentioned comments that are fun to read, be reading those. Now, not quite sure if this is meant to be a Christmas thing or not, but my mum decided to buy it me for some reason because it's like this weird badger thing with a backpack. So because all the advent calendars are sold out, she bought me one of those in the idea that she can put a chocolate in it every day or something. Bit too old for that, but it's quite a nice gesture. So it's called was it Billy the Badger or something like that? Oh, there goes a chocolate more. Ben the Badger. And if you don't know, a badger is a kind of a mammal that's common in the UK. But it's got a backpack that you can put chocolates in. I don't think this was originally a Christmas thing from what I could gather looking online. I think it was just one of those things that they were probably trying to shift their stock off at Christmas. But orange plastic suit. There's not an orange one. If you're looking at that, that's French riot armor. It's basically like armor designed to withstand like blunt force impacts. It's kind of like plasticky foam stuff. So I suppose you're not too wrong saying plastic. It's kind of like a mesh sort of thing. So basically it's a mesh that keeps the pads in, and then it's designed so all down your arms and that and shoulders you've got these kind of flexible pads that absorb impact from like baton blows, clubs and things like that. It's a pretty outdated form of riot armor now though, because the modern ones are kind of like little plastic shin pad type ones, or like essentially look like motocross armor. But those are like the kind of older generation of them, where it was essentially like kind of impact foam pads that were held together in a vest. They're not very good masks, so I would personally not pay very much at all for an ARFA. No, Insulted. It's much more like more retro foam stuff. Have you seen Rollerball? Because I think it looks a bit like the Rollerball stuff, as other people have said. So if you think like old American football style armor, it's a lot more like that. It's kind of more like old sports armor, which I guess that they figured would also be good for like. Yeah, well, chainmail is good, but chainmail doesn't absorb impacts very well. S10s are very good masks, but the issue is with the S10 that, it's outdated now. And for the price you can probably get an S10, you could get better masks. It depends, Gumball War, because a while ago you could get FM12s cheaper than S10s due to like the amount of them available. But obviously, Corona has ruined the pricing of everything. So I really don't know. Cheers, Joshua. You all right? Well, personally, Joe Mama, there's no point in me getting a new phone, so I only got one like a year ago. I don't know, Gottmik Studio, because if it's a positive minus sort of battery thing, it just won't power it, will it? Yeah, it doesn't apply to you new, it just applies to people who aren't mods. But yeah, it's getting more easy to put slow mode back on, so I'm just doing it because it means that regular, like trolls essentially can't spam the streams. Yeah, it's that sort of material, Insulted, because I assumed that something that was good for impact sports was also very good as riot armor. It's just that the modern stuff is probably lighter and stronger, so rather than being sort of a foam pad that thick for each arm, little segment, it's just kind of like polycarbonate style plastic. But yeah, if you think about like hockey armor or American football stuff from 30, 40 years ago, it's that kind of stuff. I can't remember if I looked at the label and saw when that was made. It might have been like 1990s, but it was pretty outdated by that time. It was just cool because it was on eBay for cheap, I sell out a load of them in, and I thought, it's cool retro looking sci-fi armor. It didn't show up, Gumball, so you have to try it again. Try wording it differently. But yeah, as you said, Iron Man, chainmail needs padding, doesn't it? Because if you actually look at the books that showed how, I'm sure you can find these as images online now. That if you look at the old sort of illustrations of how, like, knights or, WoW, soldiers who had good equipment, not like, peasant sort of things, but proper soldiers, they tended to have chainmail over kind of like leather padded or gambeson stuff, didn't they? So that took most of the blow, but the chainmail was to stop like a deep penetration. Oh yeah, Nerd Central. It's essentially the same game, isn't it? But with loads of extra protection. And too many adverts in the bloody breaks when they do the American, like, whatever, is it Super Bowl, like their football league that lots of people over here watch, where it's just non-stop adverts. Like, the rugby's far more fun. Oh, inductive tea cake is, yeah, you're completely right there, because, yeah, until we have a big radiological disaster, there won't be a demand on those. Something I was going to say about, I'll just read Gumball's comment first. I bought 3 masks and 2 NBC suits for 30, also bought another from 12, let's hope this one arrives. Right, you got 3 masks and 2 suits for £30 or like euros or whatever. That's a very good price if they are all bundled together, like 5 bits of gear for that price. Oh yeah, that's part of the problem, Iron Man. Until they start lowering the weight of modern armor, it makes the soldiers slower. That's the reason you get lots of war casualties where it turns out the soldiers are taking the plates out of their armor vests because the plates were too heavy to be on patrol with or whatever, and therefore they don't have the protection. Oh, that's a very good price. Yeah, because especially the Shums at the moment is one of those masks that seems to be going for sort of silly money. But yeah, speaking of Geiger counters and dosimeters and all that, it's sold now because I kept getting tempted to buy it and I didn't because I've already got one on order. But there was a Soviet DP2 with the control source or the check source in it on eBay for about 180 quid. Like £180 or a bit less, depending on what currency you're in, or a bit more. And if I didn't already have a DP2 on order, I'd have bought that in an instant. But I thought it's a bit pointless me buying it because it's quite a bit of money, and I'm sure other people want to get the magic of a DP2 in their life. And when I say magic of a DP2 in their life, I mean if you mishandle it, it'll kill you. What one, some Baron? Do you mean like the Bereg? Do you mean like this one? Or do you mean like a Terra P, but the version that's in black? Because it's not a secure Nerd Central and probably actually cost more for a good one. Yeah, Fushida's a very nice mask, aren't they, Scott? Sometimes a lot, Joshua, and sometimes not as many. I suppose it depends how determined they are when I'm doing an individual stream to come on. Like, sometimes you won't get very many. But the bunker's cooler than the camper van. That's the main thing. And it's more secure. Yeah, that one I got recently is called Inductive Tea Cake. I'll do a proper video on it at some point. I did buy the thing for it, so I'm going to see if I can reprogram it. Like the old infrared communicators. Because with that Thermo Fisher one, to change it from sieverts to rads, or REMs, you have to use one of those infrared communicators. So I ended up finding an eBay seller that still had them in stock because they're like really old technology now. If you mean dosimeters and Geiger counters, Chadiversity, firstly it's a language thing because in the Soviet Union, like Russia, as far as I can tell, anything that tells you a radiation dose is a dosimeter. But in the West, a dosimeter would be something like this that you look through and it tells you your dose. And on modern ones, it would basically be a little electric one. A Geiger counter is a kind of machine that counts active radiation by counting the amount of radioactive decays per minute or per second. You can work out a dose from a Geiger counter very accurately if you know what your source is, and not so accurately if you just know the radiation's there. But a Geiger counter is basically a type of it. It's a bit kind of like saying with vehicles, what's the difference between a car, van, truck, or stuff like that? A Geiger counter is one type of thing that could also be a dosimeter, But in the West, a dosimeter is something that shows you your accumulative dose, as in how much radiation you've absorbed. Lots of modern Geiger counters have both like a active radiation and a dose function. As I said in some old civil defense training films, the easiest way of thinking about like a rate meter or a current meter compared to a dosimeter, your rate meter is like the mile per hour clock or kilometers an hour clock on your car. So the faster you're driving, you know, that would be like your Rontgens per hour or like Sieverts per hour, whatever. The dosimeter is more like the clock of how many miles you've driven. The dosimeter tells you how long till you get like an illness dose, a fatal dose, whatever. The kind of active radiation counters are showing you like in an hour of exposure what you'd be exposed to. Does that make sense? Like I said, ideally you want something that combines the two in one. You know, so you can flick between what you've currently absorbed since you last reset it and like how dangerous it is at the moment. I think they come from their mum's basements, Joshua, in all honesty. The modern thermoplastic ones, Scott, technically I think would be either, but sadly they're not too common yet. But I think as the years go on, you'll be able to get them easier and easier. I imagine they're very, very rare V2 and V1 parts. Yeah, like I said, Jim, we probably don't know yet how long-term storage it lasts, but I imagine, considering how plastic is such a horrible pollutant in the oceans and that, it's going to last pretty much forever. Thank you, Rolandus, but that's very interesting. Yeah, so dose rate meter, that's pretty much the same as we call a lot of them here then, but it's just shortened to dosimeter then. Yeah, where over here, most of the dose rate meters would be ended up, I think we just generally shorten them to rate meters over here, and then dosimeters are like, you know, the dosimeter pens. So a bit like, you know, the Soviet DKP-50s or what's the other one? The, is it ID-1? You know, so a lot of the Western pens, we have the exact same things, but yeah, they just have slightly different terminology. But, you know, I can completely understand why you'd shorten it to dosimeter anyway. Because I keep wanting to sometimes just call them dosimeters just because after watching Chernobyl, what does the dosimeter say? Can you still get FP5s on eBay easily? Or places like Allegro.pl? If not, I don't really know because that's where I always got mine from. I've not played Metro Exodus, but I've played the other two Metros, Last Light and 2033. All right, Dusty, how are you? As for what shims cost at the moment, they're normally like £30 plus. You know, more than they should be for what they are. If you've actually got a proper East German one, that's quite rare. But I assume you've got a Czech one that was issued in East Germany. Because I don't think East Germany ever produced them. I think they just bought them from the Czechs. Yeah, because there's not a market to import them onto US eBay. That's the problem, Chadiversity. It's which country are you in? What, as in like the modern ones where people are just dumping them in the sea? Yeah, it's not good, is it? I think they reckon there's going to be a problem, don't they, in a few years' time from all like the pollution from the disposable like plastic face masks people are just going to dump in everywhere. But Skeleton Slayer, I would assume if it's in one of the Metro games, it was like a fairly common Soviet one they've just modelled for the game. Is that working all right, Dusty? Because I know you have to obviously be eating things, don't you, that provide the right nutrition. Because I know otherwise you get stuff like rabbit starvation if you eat too much of like certain high protein, like, you know, quite lean meats. But yeah, I assume you know what you're doing if you're doing that. But I know we've had like, you know, survivalist people who are a bit of idiots who die here because they think, oh, I can just eat rabbits for like 2 months straight. And then they starve to death. Yeah, I will do Nerd Central, although I've got a couple of mods that really break the FPS. All right, Flazzy? I've got one that adds a minigun, which is really fun. And there's one I've got for some custom maps. And some of those are really fun to like destroy the maps. I'll do them again at some point. But yeah, the problem is the minigun makes the FPS drop really fast because of how much debris it makes. I'm hoping with Teardown we might add a thing in the future that is maybe like one of those how would you say, like, you know, like, you know, where it deletes the oldest piece of debris after a while. Because the problem is with teardown is that the longer you're playing on a map, the lower and lower the FPS will get because there's more and more like physics debris flying about everywhere. Too many, but the answer is probably 140 to 150 odd. Yeah, see, Dusty, it sounds like you know what you're doing, but yeah, I think sometimes the problem is people just eat one type of thing for really long without, you know, doing it. You know, even if you just ate meat that was nutritious enough, you'd probably get scurvy eventually, wouldn't you? I imagine I will, Iron Man, yes. Yeah, Flazzy, and that's the thing is, even on really good gaming PCs, that's the issue, just because of how many physics objects there are. It's like every time you break a wall and it breaks into more and more chunks, that's more and more physics calculations having to be constantly done. All right, SGE 400 freeze. I know Jacob had a lot of issues. I've never owned one, so I'm not going to say are they completely awful or not. But if you have a mask that has a silicon face seal, I would always recommend, or you know, a silicon just outside bit the mask, a second skin, or like, you know, like a rubber bit, because lewisite and mustard gas are apparently very good at eating through silicon. Like, again, I don't know how long it would take to eat through, but I know that's the reason that most masks don't use silicon anymore if they're intended for military use. It does insult it. I've demonstrated that in the video. It took me quite a while of using the snap caps that were sent to me by one of the donators before I figured out, you know, how the actual action worked. Because if you're only cycling it normally, it keeps seeing like the magazine jams. But you also have to, if you take the magazine out and you reattach it with the screw, you need to make sure you get it just right. So when it does each bit, it raises or lowers to the right position. Because otherwise it might raise too high and not feed, or, you know, be too low and it won't pick the rounds up properly. I've done one before. It's a standard American drinking tube. Do you have all the bits for the canteen, Jacob? But basically it's the little connector where you take the connector off the mask, you know, like you unravel it, you get your like little spike on that. The canteen top has a spike. You make them go together in a disgusting fashion. And then when they are attached, in theory, you tip your bottle upside down. And if they make a good seal, it won't spray out there. It will go into your mouth. But yeah, in all honesty, it's just the American style drinking tube system where you're just plugging basically something into something else. That is a Nixie clock, yes. It's the one Hype sent me for free. No, I've not heard of that. Armageddon, but spelled differently. Yeah, I might get that Nerd Central when it comes out. I'll wait for initial reviews, and if there's any bugs, and then I might buy that, just because if it's a good RPG, I can waste loads of time and I'd really enjoy it. All right, the oldest Geiger counter I have, Ricardo. Right, it's in a box over there, so I can't easily get it, but it'd probably be my British 1950s contamination meter, which is about that big, probably weighs like 5 kilos plus, and it only does 0 to 10 milli Rontgen per hour. I also can't power it because it uses several types of obsolete batteries. That Radiac there is also from the 1950s, the one in the middle. But yeah, I've got quite a lot of old British sort of Cold War stuff from the 1950s. So they're pretty ancient. Because most of my Soviet ones, I think, are like 60s at the earliest. Because I don't have a DP1. When the DP2 comes, I imagine it'll be early 60s. DP5s are generally like 60s to 80s. Yeah, they're cool things, aren't they, the contamination meters, inductive tea cake, but they're massive for what they are. You know, for the tiny range it would show you. Oh, it's off the scale as soon as it's exposed to anything. Not anytime soon, Insulted, because I'm saving for the bunker. I already answered that earlier, but in the house in total, 140 to 150, I'd imagine. At the moment, no, I don't, because of how often the chat gets spammed. If there's not not a timeout, but you know, if slow mode isn't on, the chat generally gets spammed to shit. So that's cool, Joshua. People over here are a mix of whatever. All right, Nick. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a handy thing, isn't it, Dusty? Because the amount of people that waste so much money on food, like, you'd be surprised that if you're, especially even if it's not like trapping or stuff like that, but, you know, if you're just really economically shopping, how cheap you could buy things like rice in bulk, you know, like other types of grain, like oats in bulk, you know, stuff like that, certain canned foods. Yep, it's got giant valves in there, hasn't it? Speaking of old valves, something very cool. I've not done a video on it yet, but I will do at some point. Yeah, this is a cool thing. Slightly rattly, but I think that's just because there's a bit of slack in the bottom, but I think it should work fine. But yeah, giant valve. That's what's it called? A rectifier. I guess planes, it is a spooky light bulb because if you put enough electricity through it, it will irradiate you. But yes, it's a big rectifier. No, I've never heard of that before. Pickle Help sounds interesting, but I've never done it. Is Left 4 Dead 3 ever coming out, Fluzzy? Oh, I see what you mean. Or Left 4 Dead 3 because Half-Life 3 confirmed. It's a rectifier. A rectifier is basically a big old vacuum tube that was used to regulate voltage in old circuits. But rectifiers are pretty similar to different triodes and X-ray tubes. Yeah, that sounds good, Dusty. I've never got into that, but I know there's quite a lot of ham radio enthusiasts that generally come on these videos and chat about it. Yeah, a rectifier. So one of my mates was laughing the other day. He's like, "Oh, it sounds like erection." What's your budget, Jacob? If you can get check masks easily, the CM4 is actually a really good one. What, as in a diode on a modern one? Because that one I've got is set up more like a triode how the top works. But let's have a look. I'm not into my old valve, so it's an old semiconductor. Yeah, I have a feeling the one I've got there is actually a triode. But yeah, do you mean as like triodes or old diodes? Because I mean, I know obviously like diodes and semiconductors are a bit more modern, aren't they? And obviously you don't need massive giant things like that in circuits anymore. Well, everything's taking longer at the moment, Dusty, due to lockdowns over in the UK, sort of. But in terms of shipping, everything's slower from other countries because lots of things like with international flights are, you know, much lower than they used to be. I imagine with postal service around Christmas, yes, it's going to be slower. But so far, I've not really noticed it, at least on my end. You know, when stuff's been ordered, it's not really been any slower if it's coming from somewhere in the UK. Well, I wouldn't Nerd Central because I'd have probably known even back then it wasn't a good idea. Okay, inductive tea cake. I'd say I'll leave it to you if you know all about those things, but I do know that you can put high voltage through triodes, rectifiers, and they act the same way as triodes and other vacuum tubes, as in X-rays come out. That sounds cool. What was the one Rolandus that was used by Radium Quartzel in his recent video? Because that was why I saw that one and just looked for cheap triodes that I could get over here because that was only like 15 quid. It's not that, that's an American one, I think, not a Soviet one. Because it was cheap, I thought I'd just get it for doing some experiments with. Oh, thank you very much, Dominic. Yes, you can. What I'm going to have to do is, can you post a Discord ID on here? Because if you've done it through YouTube, the only way I can add you is by basically adding you to Discord manually. Oh, cool, you just got the gold badge, Fluzzy. How long did that take from when you thought it would come in? Was it like a day or two? They used to do a lot of strange things to help with plagues and things in Nerd Central. Another weird old one was bloodletting. where they used to think cutting themselves open and letting blood out would make them better. So, you know. Let me look up which model the Czech M70 chemical suit is, because off the top of my head, I don't know. Oh, cool. Thank you, Newt. Thank you very much. Oh, but yeah, you're saying to him like the same thing I just said. I think he might have to wait a moment to reply because of the slow mode. Let me look up the Czech M70. Okay, so the Czech M70 looks very similar to like the East German style one and some of the Soviet ones. So I think it would be pretty good. I mean, obviously, it's going to be fairly uncomfortable if you wear it for a long time. It might have a weird rubber smell, because that tends to be a thing with like old rubber NBC suits. But in terms of like how effective it would be, generally big old rubber suits last ages because they're thick bits of rubber, so they don't really degrade. Oh, is that in your area, Joshua? In my area, it's tier 2. But I think they said every 2 weeks it's going to be like, or every week to 2 weeks, they're going to sort of review the thing. So we might be moved to tier 3 in my area at any point. We're definitely not going to go to tier 1 anytime soon. I've not got any interest in the Plague Doctor's mask unless I could get one that I could actually make work by modifying it. But weirdly, I was going to say, Plague Doctor masks started selling out when Corona started at the same time as proper masks. All right, Richard. I mean, would it actually help with buboes planes if you scorch them? I mean, essentially they were massively swollen glands, weren't they? Like lymph node type things, weren't they? What buboes were? It's just because of how infected they got. Yeah, as in planes. The sad thing is, though, how many times I've had to explain to people on this channel that my asthma theory isn't proper. You know, as in, obviously, we know now that it's down to like microbes and things like that people get ill. But weirdly, you still get people in the comments that insist if something smells bad, then that means it makes you ill if you smell the bad smell. I mean, they're probably the same people that also think vaccines put microchips into them. I kind of just guess that. Because, you know, I don't listen to the science men talk because they're all in on the conspiracy. Yeah, it's exactly what a heretic would say. I'm still waiting for what model of DuPont NBC suit is it? Chadiversity, because they've done several like tiers of them. If it's one of the really protective ones, $50 for it might not be bad. If it's one of the really cheap ones, then no, because it's essentially just a thin layer of plastic that wrinkles like a crisp packet whenever you move about in it. But yeah, has Dominic posted his Discord ID yet? I don't know Insulted, but they're also invisible, so nobody can prove they're there, which is very convenient. I've not had an antibody test, Ant. I've had 2 like PCR tests, whatever they've called, and both of those came back negative. Right, Dominic, let me turn slow mode off, just so if it will let me, just so hopefully you can try and get your comment through because it's not showing. Can you try? Yeah, if I turn slow mode off, I wonder if you can try putting your name and then the hashtag with the 4 numbers as a separate comment. Right, let me just figure out how to turn slow mode off. I think it's here. Right, slow mode's off for a bit, so hopefully other people won't spam the chat. Well, exactly, Insulted, but you know, there's people who have smartphones and lots of other things who aren't worried at all about that being used to track them, but like other random things will be tracking you 24/7. But yeah, it'd be interesting on an antibody test because in I think it was March before the lockdown, there was a point in March when the UK hadn't really considered coronavirus to be too big a threat, even though I'd done some videos on it and all that. But, you know, at the political level, it will be fine, sort of thing. and I had what I thought was at the time flu, and one of my friends had flu at the exact same time. And we were both ill for about 2 weeks. And luckily, it was when I had some holiday off work, so I didn't have to book time off sick. But, for like a week and a half, I was barely doing anything each day. And, for the last few days, I had like a cough and that, but otherwise I was all right. So whether or not that could have been corona, I don't know. But, because it just felt like flu. It's definitely either flu or corona. Yeah, well, you learned something in your history lessons then. But yeah, miasma, the dirty smell theory or whatever it was with evil spirit smells causing disease. I did not know that, but that's interesting. But they fit fine how I do it, so I'm going to keep doing it like that. I can see a 4-leaf clover, but I don't think that'd be your username. Well, sadly, Joshua, yeah, lots of stuff like the Roman knowledge was basically destroyed during the medieval period for being heretical, or because they had no interest in it. So, yeah, there was lots of stuff that would advance human knowledge at the time, that was lost to history forever, and then was essentially, like slowly relearned, and it would have been for the betterment of all mankind if that stuff was known earlier, rather than burning people at the stake for being witches. I know the Romans weren't right about everything. There were obviously a lot of things that would be wrong by modern standards and slavery and things like that. But yes, there's a reason insulted. Yes, like you said, the church wanted to control everything. The Latin was basically, the only language that things like the Bible or whatever could be written in. So regular people couldn't read it. So they could only hear the bits the priests said. Yeah, stuff doesn't change much like that throughout history, does it? Sadly, I bet the Jews did this. Seems to be like something that's happened throughout history constantly. Yeah, it's exactly fuzzy because interestingly, there's a bit in the Bible, I'm going to paraphrase here, where Jesus says, basically, you don't need to go to temple. You can just pray to me in your own way, or however it's said, pray to God in your own way. It's obviously not worded like that. But of course, the church says if you don't go to the church, you're going to go to hell forever. But it's like, but the bloke in the book you're meant to be reading doesn't say that. So, okay, so his username's Dominic. We got that far. What's the hashtag and the 4-digit number? Yeah, so does Oxford University, Flazzy, especially in my area in Oxford. Yeah, good luck getting good house prices because the university owns them and won't sell them. What is my worst mask? The same one it always is, the pewter Chinese one. Speaking of veganism, it's not really veganism, but have you seen in Taiwan now? Was it either Taiwan or Singapore? They've approved the vat-grown chicken, which sounds really interesting. So they don't have to kill any animals anymore to have something that is nutritionally exactly the same as meat. Well, and also a thing to point out with European sort of Christianity is a lot of it is paganism that was kind of adopted into it, to make it more popular. Because I suppose if you're converting pagans, you say, right, rather than us just murdering you, here's a load of your holidays recycled into our religion, and we'll just pretend it was like that to begin with. It depends what it is, Flazzy. I imagine if it's like rare stuff, that'd be interesting. But it's more because they could feed lots and lots of very poor countries with it. That essentially they can build some sort of reactor that churns out Soylent Green and feed people with it, as opposed to needing agricultural space when sometimes the people there starve anyway. Oh no, there's another one. For the person asking about trolls, one's finally turned up. I'll have to put slow mode on if they keep making new accounts, just to say. Quite obviously, I like history if I do a channel with lots of stuff regarding history. I don't think I've had any meat today, Nerd Central, but I have had some milk today. So, and I've had some chocolate, so I'm definitely not a vegan. But I haven't had meat today just because I haven't had anything with meat in it. I've had like vegetable stuff today and some chocolate brownie. Which one do you mean by the M1? If you mean the Yugoslavian M1, no, that's not a good mask. Oh, sorry, that sounds like there's actually an interesting question I missed. Cameron said, what website do you mostly buy your gas mask off of, and what Russian Geiger counter would you recommend? Well, eBay is the answer easily for gas masks. Russian Geiger counter is probably either the IMD5 or the DP5. That's the one you'd find the most useful, just due to the very wide range it does. Because some of them are like very high or very low ranges, and that's it. DP5s and IMD5s kind of do background radiation to your dead levels of radiation. How late are you, Radiac Maniac? 36 minutes late. Well, as I've said, Shadowversity, this is getting very irritating now. I won't have one till I have one, so stop asking. When I have one, you'll know immediately from doing videos in it. Well, M17 filters are basically impossible to find in the UK. I mean, I've got M17 filters in my M17, but I'm not taking them out to put them in a clone. There are a few sites, I believe, Oliver Lewis, that specialize in like Soviet, like militaria. But other than like just in general eBay, I really don't know. Because again, it's just because I think a lot of it is harder to get over there because of the distance from Russia. You know, because obviously in Western Europe, we're so close essentially to lots of the former communist states. It's very cheap for it to be shipped here. Oh, they always do Insulted. I'm saying that's why I'm going to put slow mode back on as soon as what's his name figures out how to put his Discord ID in the chat. No, Dominic, they're not. The one where you said Dominic came through and then nothing else did. Worst case scenario, you're going to have to make it as a comment on my most recent video, and then we can find it that way. Because generally, comments on regular videos don't get hidden as much as like live stream messages, where YouTube seems to have its like giant blacklist of words you can't say because they just disappear your comments. Well, they had. Do you mean in terms of the connectors on it, Picklehub? It probably is, because I'm sure part of it is just like a negative and a positive power cable, essentially. I don't know, Richard. I mean, that's going to be a bit far off, I think, at this point. I think it's an interesting thing. Oh, 4 6s. Right. Can you try Newt then, please? Dominic, hashtag 444. Oh, sorry, 6666. So Dominic, hashtag 6666, and see if it lets you add him to the server. Thank you very much, Newt. That's not the one Radiac Maniac, is it, that sold yesterday? And I didn't buy it because I was on about that. If it was the one you posted on Discord, that literally sold within a day. The one that was on eBay, because that was, I think, about £180 in the UK. And I was sort of considering it, but I didn't want to buy it because I know like you and other people wanted to get a DP2. And yeah, that's literally gone today because I thought I'd look it up again and see if it's there. But yeah, it's gone. If you're after a DP2, you either need to know somebody privately who will sell you one or have the money ready when one turns up, because DP2s are WoW kind of wanted due to what's inside them. You know, the fact that you can kill yourself with a DP2. I mean, it wouldn't be a pleasant way of committing suicide, would it? It'd be an interesting way of doing it. Could probably convince some alien kooks that, you know, the aliens got you. Oh, his skin was all red and he was dead with no apparent reason. It must have been the Greys. Anyway, Radiac Maniac, if my one turns up all right, I'll give you the contact details if he's okay with it, with the bloke who sold me a DP2. Because if it turns up all right, then, you know, he might be able to get more. And I'm sure if he makes a profit selling them, he'll want to sell them to more people. I don't know what the postage would cost, though, from Russia to Canada. There certainly is a lot of misinformation on the vaccines. Right, with the vaccines, right, God's official, right, if you want the most boring perspective I can give on it, the Pfizer one or whatever it is that has to be stored at -70 isn't that great, as in, as much as the vaccine has very good from the trials, although apparently this is a bit flawed, you know, like 95% success rate, it's quite an expensive vaccine per, like, shot, essentially. And it has to be stored -70°C, doesn't it? Which makes it pretty useless for certain countries with poor infrastructure to give out. There's another vaccine that I think is getting approved now in some places that's going to be a similar cost, but doesn't have to be kept at a really cold temperature. So that'd be better. The Oxford Pfizer one looks really, whatever it's called, looks really promising, but that's not passed all the regulation tests yet in the UK. Do you think he got it from Borat, Chris? No, Rudy Giuliani, she is too old for you. Well, they're not going to know that for years, planes, but people who get coronavirus seem to have long-term side effects. And personally, I would always risk a vaccine over, you know, considering, again, I don't see how a vaccine is going to cause long-term side effects. Generally, medications that cause long-term side effects are the ones that kind of are a bit more involved in something that makes an immune response. Yeah, I think Newt's sorting it out, Radiac Maniac. Thank you. It's a bit messy, Pickle how, but it sorts the thing out. The badger's not normally there. That's kind of a weird Christmas joke gift, so I thought I'd put him in the background. Look up long COVID planes if you don't know. Lots of people that get coronavirus. Let me get it up from a proper medical website. Right, here's one from the British Heart Foundation. So again, that's a charity that does lots of medical stuff, rather than it being somebody's blog. But basically, it's where people get, like, here we go, fatigue, breathlessness, anxiety and depression, palpitations, chest pain, joint or muscle pain, not being able to think straight or focus, brain fog. But it's basically like where weeks to months after people have recovered from corona, they're still getting, like, stuff that stops them working or puts them in a lot of pain. Yeah, formaldehyde was definitely bad, Flazzy, but that was something that affected babies during pregnancy, which is quite different than the vaccine. Again, I think that's the reason that the vaccine is not being given to pregnant women at the moment, just to be extra sure, you know. But yeah, formaldehyde was something to do basically with genetic makeup of babies in the womb, which makes it very different than, you know, a regular vaccine. But I can understand why people be worried about a vaccine made this quickly. But I think part of the reason the vaccines are coming out so fast is how much money the companies can make if they can sell them, and how much funding's being put into them. You know, because as sad as it is, people dying of some, like, very preventable disease in a third world country aren't exactly prime time markets for expensive vaccines compared to something crippling the globe. Well, sorry to hear that, Chadiversity, but yeah. Yeah, from what I understand, 2 of the vaccines, but not the Oxford one, are basically where they've modified the virus, aren't they? The Oxford one seems a lot safer to me on paper, and again, I don't know anything about this sort of stuff. But just simply because the Oxford vaccine is where they've basically taken a version of the cold virus that monkeys can get, and they've added a tiny bit of the corona code to it. So basically, it would be like getting a cold that would barely affect you. But from that cold, your body learns the corona coding to start making antibodies. I'll have a look for you, Radiac Maniac. I think there's a problem on both sides of vocal majority, because you'll get people on one side saying it's a hoax, do nothing about it, you know. all that. And then you get people on the other side that are saying shut down everything, completely destroy the economy, where really you need to shield the most vulnerable people, and stuff like that. Yes, I believe that is the one that's sold. However, that one says there's 2 available. So has the person relisted it? Let me have a look for you. Well, I did look earlier and that one didn't show up. DP2 Decimeter. No, that's not showing up for me anymore on eBay. The other DP2 is showing up, which is like the camera that I think changes color when it's exposed to radiation. But the big DP2 box of strontium-90 in isn't showing up. There's a manual for a DP2. I don't think you'd want the manual. But yeah, if you look up the one you looked up, which, let me look in my watch history. Or can't you see watch history on eBay? Can you only see? Actually, it'll be on recently viewed, won't it? It's disappeared from my recently viewed list as well. So it's either sold or eBay's removed the listing. Probably because they said had a control source in it, I imagine. But yes, it's not showing up for me on eBay anymore. Well, I won't know, Alex Pro Gaming. You'd been given a message by the moderators when you were kicked, if you were kicked. But generally, I don't ban anyone from it. But I can look for the ban logs. What was your Discord name? Spamming isn't going to make me invite you. It's just going to make me want to ban you from this chat, in all honesty. Oh, you need to shut down things vocal that aren't necessary, and you need to shield the most vulnerable people. All right, let me look at the ban log, and I can tell you exactly why. For the sake of the moderator that's banned you, I'm not going to put it in, but I can look at the banned people log. Colonel Dimitri, banned after second strike. Multiple times he posted, offensive things, including a black person's face onto a penis. All right, you're gone. You're going off here as well, because I'm not allowing racists on here. So yeah, basically you're one of those people that breaks rules on purpose and then complain you're the victim. Bye. No, a vaccine can't trace your whereabouts. You only get the vaccine when you go to the place to get vaccinated. Well, they need to do it twice, don't they? It's 3-week intervals, basically, I think, isn't it? Like, you go have your vaccine and they book you in for 3 weeks' time to get the second booster for it. I'll let me look at the DP62. I don't know if I've seen that one, but I know there are the ones that like glow in the dark Geiger counters based on radioactive amounts. DP62. Is DP66 showing up? I used to have one of those. That's definitely not the thing. Let me just search DP62 Geiger into Google and see if it comes up. There's a Czech one coming up that looks a lot like the DP2. Although no, it's actually got a cable on it, so that isn't it. Is it this thing? No, that's a modern thing. I can't see the one you're on about coming up. But obviously I do know that you do get radiation detectors which basically work using some sort of scintillation type thing where the color changes or glows depending on activity of radiation. All right, cool, skeleton. Let me look that up just quickly. It's one of those very, very retro-looking radios, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, you can see quite a lot of old military radios that look like that, but I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about them because I don't have much interest in radios. I was clicking on a link, wasn't I? Oh yeah, it's because it doesn't let you click on links in the stream. That's the one that looks a bit like the one that's being called a DP2. I mean, I don't think that video demonstrates it in use, does it, that you've just put there? I think the person who wrote the description for this video can't really speak English. This device will make for lovers of military history. If you want to know when you can sleep at night, you can do it without a flashlight. Start your computer. Start your computer. Go to your car. Turn on your car. Turn on your car. Turn on the car. Turn your eyes on a new look from your eyes. When you start working on your home screen, to start your own home. Radioactivity DP62 is a portable device designed to determine the presence of beta and gamma contamination areas in the field. Right. It says turn on your car and turn on your computer. I don't know what that has to do with a Geiger counter. It's not too bad on mine, Nick, but if Mike's on, he doesn't like it. Do I get furlough pay, Chris? If I get furlough pay, I'll put up with lockdown again. If not, I'll wear the escape hood. As far as I'm aware, there'll be nothing to do with tracing of a vaccine. What is the worst World War II mask? The M44, probably. I'd love to, but the problem is, where I am, there's nowhere I could use a metal detector and legally dig stuff up, because it's not my land. No, I will have a bunker, though. I will. But no, you'd know straight away if I had the bunker, because there'd already be videos in it. Cameron, watch Surviving the Apocalypse's channel, and he does a demonstration to you on how to make batteries for them. As in converting batteries that aren't the right type so they work in it, or like adapting AA's to fit it properly. No, I mean, Lenin's power station wasn't very good, was it? I mean, if it's a YouTube video, you can literally just type the name of it or a link in here. Yeah, it's the thing, Fuzzy, isn't it? It's, again, when people say stuff about ROC posts or whatever, or other bunkers like that are in their country, that's interesting. But it's when it's, do you own the bunker yet? No. But why don't you own the bunker yet? Well, not in the UK. There's probably countries where you can legally own rocket launchers, but not in most first world countries. Right, the link won't work again, but let me just modify it so I can actually look at it. Okay, so let's see. I mean, it's pretty cool, isn't it? That it just basically is something that you kind of winch up with your hand and then it kind of flashes. But I suppose it's very obsolete, isn't it, by modern standards, just because of the fact you can get little tiny pocket dosimeters which will give you far more information with batteries that will last a year in them. I suppose probably especially somewhere like Texas, I imagine, T. Dixon. But yeah, like I said, I know there's a lot of stuff you can own in America, but there's like all the machine gun tax stuff, isn't there? You have to spend a hell of a lot of money if you actually just want to get something like that. I have an RPK, funnily enough. You can see it in the background if I move my head. See, there's the barrel of it. Can't show it to you on the stream because YouTube says guns aren't allowed on the stream. There's deact, by the way. In case anybody wonders, I don't have a live RPK just randomly sitting behind me. That's pretty funny, Rolandus. What? Because it gives you wanker's cramp using it. That's pretty funny. I like the sense of humour behind it. Well, I suppose, Flazzy, the government wouldn't like you owning an RPG, would you? Because then you said, I can shoot your tanks. How do they relinquish your constitutional rights of it? Is there basically a lot more checks done on you? Yes, ultimatum, I know they can, but the problem is they don't like to look it up. What's your budget, Brighthole? And I'll try and recommend something for your budget. If you're being really, really cheap, you can buy very, very meh Chinese things off of eBay. The really cheapest ones won't even tell you a dose, they just click. In terms of sort of an actual proper Geiger counter, in a sense, it gives you some idea of dose or sort of dose rate with a number, either on an analog or a digital display. You're probably looking $50 to $100 or pounds. Technically, Flazzy, can't you own like AKs and AR converted to 22 long rifle? It seems completely pointless. You know that. Yes, you'd know they have Pickle How if you watch the videos. And then they got bored, so I didn't have to be searched or anything. I literally just answered that, Oliver. The previous time it was asked, and then asked for more information for what budget range you want. I thought you wanted a Borat cutout the other day. But yeah, it depends on your budget. Because again, the more you pay, the much cooler stuff you can get. I don't own any World War I or World War II cameras. Obviously, there were cameras and film cameras around at that point. Obviously, not digital, but analog. But I would not be the person to ask about that because I don't have any World War II cameras. No, I do not have a Dragonov, sadly. I mean, I'd love a Dragonov SVD or whatever. They're cool, but, you know, UK. Anything technically, I believe, in the UK that's bolt action or, you know, like lever action, basically where you have to charge it per shot, I think can be owned on Section 1. Well, you can get thorium cameras at Nerd Central. That's actually a thing. But it's not that much thorium in them. Well, I mean, if you had the camera hanging from your neck every day for your job, you might actually be in serious trouble. But in terms of, you know, actual like radiation dose, picking them up and playing with them is fine. But I can understand why Radiac Maniac, as the guy was saying, because of hand cramp. We know, Young, because it's been brought up lots of times. There's none on the ones I own. It's for pistol calibers, basically. The reason being is they're like, somebody in a gang could get one and shoot somebody, but they're actually adding more guns than they're taking off of the obsolete caliber list. As in, you can own more now. All right, the person who keeps asking weird questions, I'm getting rid of. Never seen the Diary of Anne Frank. I think we did a bit about it at school at one point. But yeah, it wasn't on today's one, Young, but yeah, it gets brought up a lot recently because people are like, oh my god, you're going to have to surrender yours. I was like, no, thankfully, the Swiss caliber I've got and 5.77 British aren't on that list. It's all basically like 7, 8, and 9mm pistol rounds, isn't it? There is a list that you can find on the Home Office website somewhere, buried where it's impossible to find in like a 50-page document, but yeah. The cool thing is they're re-adding, I think, Mauser cartridges to the obsolete caliber list. Yeah. Protect the public from people with very specialized interests who can buy guns on the black market anyway for enough money. What, the fact it mounts, gas mask guy? I mean, thankfully mine hasn't mounted, but they have a habit of doing it. If you mean an automatic car, yes. If you mean an automatic rifle, no. So you can have semi-auto shotguns, can't you? But yeah, not for rifles. Not legally, Chadiversity. I'm sure there's ways of modifying guns that would get you in lots of trouble, that would make some of them shoot full auto. Like, I've seen videos of Americans doing of Ruger 1022s, but I don't want to get anybody with guns in Britain in trouble, so I'm not going to even bring that up now. Airbows seem quite cool, Young G, but I've never seen them for good prices. I've only seen like 1 or 2 UK retailers ever have them in, like on their online stores. I think they were close to £1,000, and that's ignoring the price of buying, like, you know, the air to keep refilling them. Because essentially like PCPs, aren't they? But they just shoot arrows. I've got one, Brightold. It's a very nice Geiger counter if you get one in working condition. It has a range from background radiation all the way up to 500 Rontgen per hour. You can charge DKP 50 dosimeters in it. It's got a nice glow-in-the-dark back screen, like that Polish one over there. I don't know if that's going to show up for you there, but yeah, it's got the nice glow-in-the-dark back screen. All in all, the DP75 is lovely, except for 2 things. It tends to break quite easily. Mine hasn't, but apparently if you drop it, it breaks quite easily, unlike the Soviet ones. So bear that in mind. The other problem is that a lot of people don't like about it, it doesn't do the classic Geiger counter ticking. It does have a very quiet little chirping noise every time the needle moves, but it's not like a sort of noise, you know. It's more like you can very faintly hear it chirping. So if you wanted a Geiger counter that makes the classic ticking noise, you'd be quite disappointed. If you wanted a very good quality Cold War era Geiger counter, it's probably one of the best. Just you have to be very careful not to smack it about too much. It runs on either 2 or 3 D-cell batteries. I can't remember if it's 2 or 3. But it's like the DP66 but better and goes up to 500 Rontgen rather than 200 Rontgen, because the DP66 is basically the exact same ranges as the DP5, except for the DP66 uses 2 different tubes, the high ranges, rather than 1 SI3BG tube. Fastest car I've been in. One of my friends had a Caterham 7 at one point, which is pretty damn fast, like a kit car version of it. That was pretty damn fast, but that was more like a classic fast car. I've been in a couple of people's cars where they've had super sporty hatchbacks as well. You know, like the ones that are like 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something, those sort. My Golf was never that fast when I had a Golf, but you know, like the people who buy a top-end hatchback and then tune it, which probably costs them shitloads on the insurance. I know a couple of my mates who did that ended up just going for more regular cars afterwards just due to insurance costs. But yes, they're very nice cars, but you know, I've never been in like a proper racing car, but I've been in basically like rally-style hatchbacks, which are fun. Yeah, if you can get one in good condition, Brightold, go for it. I mean, the DP75s are fucking lovely in terms of how well they are made. It's just, as I said, don't knock it about. No, I obviously do not have flashbang grenades. I don't think you can legally own them here. The only grenades I've got are deactivated grenades that are legal, you know, where there's nothing inside them. They've been like drilled into and hollowed out. Well, I mean, I like Redheads Nerd Central. They just tend to be quite crazy. It depends on the girl, doesn't it, really? Yeah, that's the thing, Fuzzy. Cars like that are really nice, aren't they? It's just the issue is whether or not, you know, how affordable are they on insurance? Because I think for a lot of people, as much as really nice cars would be really, really nice, you end up just going for practicality after a while, which is the reason, like, I like my Sandero. because yeah, it's not all that fast. It's not bad 0 to 64. It is, but you know, it's like the Sandero I just like because it's really cheap to run and comfortable enough to sit in. Smoke's mask, I think, is basically an FM12 with 2 tubes attached to the side. So if you get if you had this mask, a CT12 or an FM12, and you put 2 hoses on either side of it, I think it's basically that, with the hoses coming down. I think that's what it's meant to be. But again, a lot of the Rainbow Six Siege masks aren't really real masks. They're kind of like, oh, that looks cool, let's put that on there. But yes, so basically one of those, I would say. Not yet, Radiant Maniac. I might have to look at one of my friend's houses, because it might have been where I went round his house to show it him, and then I might have left it there. He's definitely not somebody to steal something, but it might be it's in his house somewhere and he just hasn't realised. I mean, I think Nerd Central maybe... The thing is, a lot of the gas mask bongs are actually made from really cheap rubber kind of clones of masks, but some fetishists have ruined some really, really nice masks before, and Slipknot Sid Wilson fans that basically attack a mask with a staple gun because it makes it so edgy, man. I'm pretty sure you can buy Lucky Strikes over here. I mean, I quit smoking years ago, but I'm sure Lucky Strikes are a thing over here. I'm trying to think what like the most popular cigarettes probably are. Benson and Hedges, probably Camels. Marlboro, I think, is probably a thing here. Tell you what, let me go on a supermarket's website and I will read you what cigarettes you can buy. And remember, kids, smoking's not good for you. I used to smoke pipe, tobacco, and cigars mostly, and a bit of the green stuff, but I don't smoke anymore. It's on groceries, isn't it, on the thing? Let's put in cigarettes. Right. What will Joe Sainsbury sell me? Oh yeah, I mean Golden Tobacco, not Golden Tobacco. Golden Virginia is really popular, but that's rolling tobacco. So I assume you mean you know, like regular cigarettes. Silk Cut, Marlboro, Benson and Hedges, Lambert and Butler, Embassy, Super Kings, John Player. Any other brands? Richmond. But yes, personally, I would say if you're going to smoke cigars or pipe tobacco, it's just generally better in every way than cigarettes. No, I've never used a bong, Nerd Central. Whenever, like I said, I won't talk too much to impressionable young people about this stuff, but you just roll it into Yeah, snus weirdly is banned here. You could buy it if you were going through an airport from a country that was legal to bring back in your luggage, but I don't think snus has ever been legal here. It's like the tea bags, isn't it? You put in your mouth with tobacco in. Yeah. Oh, and for the people who don't know what Plains is saying, that was a completely fine message, Radiac Maniac. In the UK, a fag is not a gay person, it's a cigarette. So when you say, I'm going to smoke a fag, it means you're going to have a smoke. It doesn't mean you're going to murder a gay person. It showed Plains to me that your message was banned. It says, message automatically health review hidden by the Radiac Maniac. Oh, or do you mean snus isn't banned? I'm sure at one point you couldn't buy it, even if it wasn't banned, like they didn't let anybody sell it. But yeah, that's all right. It's just a difference in language, Radiac Maniac. Depends on what's in it, Flair. So the simple answer is no, but if it's basically 99-something% CBD, it's legal. But it's one of those drugs now that's barely enforced. Like, out of my mates that do it, you know, you never have to worry about the police because they've got far, far better things to do than worry about, you know, that. I mean, it used to be a Class C, and when they were told they should legalize it, they moved it to a Class B drug because, you know, fucking politicians. But it's literally, you know, one of those drugs nobody gives a shit about. But you know, it's one of those things that if they want to pick on black people, the police will basically like, "Oh, I can smell marijuana in your car. I'm going to have to search you now, boy." You know, Jacob, I don't want to say anything that would incriminate me, but the answer would be something that would hurt them. Yeah, see, T. Dixon, here, different drugs are in different categories. I don't know what it's like in the States, but I'll go off fairly soon. But in the UK, we have different classes of drugs. And basically, Class C means it really shouldn't even be enforced. Class A is basically like heroin. Is methamphetamine a Class A here? Cocaine. But, you know, the drug rules here are stupid because politicians regularly snort cocaine and nobody cares because they're rich and powerful and can do whatever they want. Like I was saying, weed used to be a Class C. Then they made it a more strict drug when scientists told them to legalize it because they did more harm than good having it as a criminal thing. The MF11 is quite a cool one. It depends which variant of the MF11. Yeah, that's an interesting place. I've just never ever seen it for sale, and I heard it was banned. So maybe it's not banned. It might just be nowhere stocks it. There's a sign for those Flazzy on. I don't think it's there anymore, but one of our local pubs used to have a thing for pork faggots on the wall. Well, exactly, Nerd Central. I think you'll find, you probably noticed, that countries that have taken that sort of approach to it have far less organised crime and far less dependence issues. And people take a purer product that's got less shit put in it. All right, big tasty cow. So you went from a sheep strangler to a big tasty cow. Well, it shows you're still a member, so I know you're not somebody pretending. You know, if somebody says, "Oh, I'm this person," then they're actually not. What's my favourite cheap gas mask? What is your meaning of cheap? Finish M61s, if you class that as cheap. They're bloody good. So is Schedule 1 in the States vocal worse than a Schedule 2 or less than a Schedule 2? Because in the UK, like a Class C is not as strict as a Class B. And what's really weird in the UK is sometimes you can get several drugs of the same effects which fall into all three classes, even though just depending on how much you took would make it a Class A, B, or C. Nerd Central, I think we've heard that several fucking times this stream. Thank you very much. Cheap gas mask under $20. You're going to struggle due to Corona. Check CM3. That's the only thing I can think of. Buy a cigarillo then, Joshua. You can get little tiny ones, cigarillos. Work, big tasty cow. We were very busy yesterday when everybody suddenly decided to come in because lockdown was over. Today wasn't as bad. Yeah, see, vocal majority. Again, it sounds like people making the laws either don't like certain demographics that might like certain drugs or are just fucking completely delusional. Do they, Pickle Hell? Well, that's interesting if that's true. Lots of nations still have it in stockpiles, Flair, so sadly I think it would still be used now and again. When you say DP3B, do you mean that one, Dominic? Definitely the DP5. DP3 is the same range as a US CDV 715. Basically, you're going to die levels of radiation. DP5V can tell you if radiation is above background. Yes, Joshua. I had Cuban cigar for 21st birthday. I've had others, but they're nice, but I don't think they're much better than some other brands of cigars and cigarillos. But again, don't smoke anymore. The cigarillos, Flazzy. Have I still got some in my drawer? I did give a load of my cigar type things away when I quit smoking. You know, just so I wouldn't be tempted to smoke them, and a lot of my mates still smoked. Yes, I do have some. So, okay, so Cafe creams are like cheaper ones. You can get even cheaper ones than this, can't you? Is it Moments, which are even cheaper ones? I still love the smell of these. Very nice. But yeah, so they're cigarillos. So basically what they are is like mini cigars, tiny machine wrap cigars. Oh, there goes one out the packet. But yeah, as you can see, size-wise, that's a cigarillo. Keep falling out. So yeah, those are cigarillos, like what Clint smokes in, the Dollars trilogy. Cohibas, I like saying, you can actually get Cuban cigarillos. So the exact same size things, but actual Cuban brands. Oh, and they have the trading cards on the back. Smokers die younger. Oh, it's the same one on both. That's not original. My favourite one's the Dracula one, but I don't think I've got that on any of them. Mike, Weapon Collector, has a whole set of them. Smoking when pregnant harms your baby. Again, smokers die younger. I don't think I've started many revolutions. Smoking is highly addictive. It's like heroin. Oh, is that meant to be heroin, but it's a cigarette in the thing? I can't work that out, if that's a clever Photoshop. I can't work out if that's a filter there, or if it's just meant to be regular heroin. I think that's a cigarette they photoshopped in there. But you don't inject cigarettes, you smoke them. It's disgraceful. What Flazzy hidden behind Zoom exit? In all the things now, they have to hide them behind like a little counter, don't they, that closes where they give you a book if you want to read what inventory they've got, because they're not allowed to open it to show you, because they thought apparently that would stop kids wanting to smoke. Yeah, there's been a few things here though, Radiac Maniac, where it turns out the pictures they put on the smoking ones weren't smoking related at all. But you don't have to. They don't have to hide alcohol, but they have to hide cigarettes. The thing that annoys me about the new packaging planes is more the fact that when I bought a nice actual proper box of cigars at one point, it damaged the nice wooden box because they stuck a fucking label on it telling me how dangerous they were. Anyway, I'm going to go off the stream now. I hope everybody had a nice evening. It's been quite a fun stream chatting, even if I was asked how many gas masks do I own over and over and over again. Do I own a bunker? Yeah, the thing is, no central. If you're a smoker, you're not going to like one. It's more if you're a smoker and you can get into it, you're going to say, wow, this is so much better than a cigarette. But yeah, you're smoking a Belgian cigar, and it is my honour tonight, Alex. Are the Belgians famous for making good cigars? The Dutch weirdly make cigars, but they're normally all machine rolled. But Dutch cigars aren't actually bad when I've tried them. Dutch cigars are quite a big market. Like where they're not considered premium cigars, but they're considered like pretty okay cigars. But my favourite tobacco I've ever smoked, if people want to know before I go off, was probably Dunhill Royal Yacht, which famously was the pipe tobacco Stalin smoked. So if you're an evil, murderous, communist dickhead, you still have a good taste in tobacco. Very, very strong, earthy sort of taste, but no added flavours or anything. Anyway, see you all. Have a good evening.